Ugh, 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 ugh. So, why am I grumpy all of a sudden? Well, when I was scrolling YouTube, I came across a video that said dwarves shouldn't exist or they don't make sense somehow. And I, as a person who identifies with dwarves a lot, got up in arms. Here you go, my arms. And was like, who dares say that dwarves cannot or should not exist? And apparently, another YouTube creator, Grungeon Master, shout out to him. Go check out his channel, his video that talks about the dwarves. Actually, made it as a clickbait title that got me really, really mad. But in the video, they make quite a lot of sense. They raised some interesting points in the video and gave their own solution to the world building problems, but I feel like somehow something was missing, so I decided to make my own video. I personally feel attacked by the idea that the dwarf shouldn't exist because I come from a culture, Caucasian. When I mean Caucasian, I don't mean white people, I mean real mountain dwelling Caucasians.
Caucasian from the mountains of Caucasus.
And a lot of characteristics of dwarves, other than the height. I feel a lot of connection to their culture and the mythological version that is created in pop fantasy because it relates a lot to my own culture, mountain dwelling, traditionalist, warrior, blacksmiths, that I identify myself as well. You can see my giant beard. And wait a moment. Here is my latest in many metalworking and crafting projects. So I think it is very important to use historical examples when you're trying to world build, because one of the best world builders is, of course, the OG God. God created this world built it in such a fine way that we can use it as inspiration for our own world building. So, what I'm trying to say here is that when we are trying to world build and create fantastical races and stories set in different worlds, we should try using historical examples or cultural examples from our world in world building, especially about people that live in similar environments or have similar cultural or historical issues. Of course, trying to be as respectful as possible to the culture that we are using inspiration for. For example, when we are trying to build dwarves in our new fantastical world, be it D&D game you're trying to run or you're trying to write a comic book or a story or a book, we should always try to use mountainous societies in our world. Like Inca from the Andes Mountains is a great example of a culture living in the mountains that developed their unique ways to dealing with lack of resources. Incas, of course, created very interesting staircase like farming, and there are, of course, other examples we can pull from. For example, I think Ethiopian highlands are a great example of society in Africa that developed very interesting culture. They're, of course, one of the oldest Christian societies that have mountain cave churches, which is really, really interesting. Or we could use, or for example, Himalayan societies like Tibet and many other cultures that live in that high highland, how they developed spirituality and built temples and such interesting architecture. Oh, black hills and mountains of Balkans that a lot of mysterious mythology and folklore comes from. The stereotypical voice for dwarves, of course, comes from Scottish people, and because they're also living in the Highlands. But mentioning all those interesting societies, and there are many, many more cultures that we can pull for dwarven societies. I personally feel that Caucasians, my people, are the best examples for mountain dwelling blacksmiths with huge beards and grumpy attitudes. Of course, I am biased, but I am biased for a reason. So, welcome back to my porch, and we are here overlooking the mountains of Caucasus. But these are lesser Caucasian mountain hills, much smaller than up in the north, greater Caucasian mountains, where I am from. Um, Comparison is quite massive, but this also provides a lot of protection, a lot of resources, and if you do not mind, I will do a little 30 to 1 minute history lecture where I will provide most recent and important history of Caucasus, of Georgia, and Caucasian people in general. About 1.8 billion years ago, first Homo Georgicus formed. And then came Neanderthals, our direct ancestors. Then this horrible storm happens and most places flood, and then ancient civilizations rise and fall of kingdoms. This one Cimmerian barbarian named Conan starts mucking about. Well, in much more recent history, about 8 to 10 to 20,000 years ago, this group of Homo sapiens who mixed with Neanderthals living here formed into what we now call Caucasian hunter-gatherers. These people are presumed to be the ones who domesticated early hoofed animals that we use today, like sheep, goats, pigs, and maybe even cattle, which later formed a lot of ancient peoples. For example, Caucasian hunter-gatherers mixed with Levantine Middle Eastern hunter-gatherers, creating Anatolian farmer civilization, first who then went into Europe, brought agriculture, and formed as early European farmers who became different early European civilizations such as Minoans, Sardinians, Etruscans, even the ancient people who built Stonehenges were actually part of the early European farmer communities. Then, of course, many different other barbarians invaded and took over. You see a lot of that influence in Tolkien's writing and even George R. R. Martin's writing. Like if you know Game of Thrones early history about children of the forest fighting first men and then Andals. First men are, of course, Celtic people who, and children of the forest are actually early European farmers, and giants were probably early European hunter-gatherers that lived before farmers came along. Okay, I'm not going. Okay, I usually do this. I go into huge rants, but coming back to it, the modern populations of Caucasians are formed by Caucasian hunter-gatherers that live to this day in the highlands of the mountains. Then early European farmers who mixed with and created, for example, Georgians. I'm half Megrelian, who are more influenced with our agrarian society, half Tiuli, who are direct descendants of the mountain hunter-gatherers. And of course, there are many other people who came into this region. For example, in the north, many nomadic societies came here and settled here, like Scythians. I'm making a Scythian armor, you saw right there, who settled here. And for example, Ossetians are direct descendants of Alans, who are direct descendants of the Scythians. And there are many other communities like Armenians are half native Caucasians and half Indo-Europeans who came into the region 3,000 years ago. We have really long and complicated history. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. But this region, geography, going into geography now, lecture on top of lecture, of your keeping up, geography that is unique here, that provided such sanctuary for these ancient people for thousands and thousands and even millions of years ago, is that this is, of course, southern Lesser Caucasian mountain range that connects to the Middle Eastern mountain ranges, Zagros Mountains, and going into Anatolia, which is actually formed by Arabian tectonic plate crashing into Eurasian tectonic plate and creating this two separate but connected mountain ranges of Lesser Caucasus and the Greater Middle East, and highest of the high European mountain range, the Northern Caucasian mountain range. These two mountains of Greater Caucasus over there and Lesser Caucasus over here create this little chasm, little island of earth in the middle of the mountains. And of course, there is the Black Sea over there and Caspian Lake over there. So this mountain, sea create this little island in between where Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan reside, which is full of nature. Mountains provide two great resources, which is water and minerals that then flow down into the pool, into this chasm that I reside in, and make this earth very, very fertile. As you can see in my little farmland here, and providing protection from, of course, cold northern winds. Up there is Russia and steppe lands, and it's really, really windy and really, really cold. And hot desert climate of the south, Middle East, and go further down, you go to Africa. So we are protected from hot weather by these mountains, cold weather by those mountains, and so western and eastern bodies of water provide us with rain, which then trickles down onto these mountains, creating ice caps on top of these hills, and which provide constant water and nourishment, which is of course filled with minerals that come down from the mountains. And let's not forget, because it's a tectonic crash, Caucasian mountains are pretty young compared to other mountains. And currently, there are no active volcanoes here, but there are many, many dormant volcanoes, which of course create a lot of spring water. Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia, is actually created by warm, mineral rich spring waters. So, in that region where Tbilisi now resides, many people created settlements to bathe themselves in these warm mineral waters. And through the river that goes through here, footbed of these mountains, we can see there is a river, Kwari River, or is that is more popularly known in the West, Kura River. Kura River comes from the west and goes into the Caspian Sea, Caspian Lake, technically. And this pathway actually created one of the main connective forces between European civilizations and Eastern civilization. Through this path actually went Silk Road. So basically, what I'm trying to get here, through these mountains, create a protective space that protects us from raiders and conquerors, and the bodies of water and the rivers that connect us through it creates a great mercantile pathway that go through Caucasus and go into Western Europe through Black Sea, going into then into the Mediterranean Sea. Our culture is closer to Mediterranean culture than Eastern European or any other type of culture. And then through the river, we go into Asia. We go to into Caspian Sea that we can use to go into Central Asia and North Asia, or going to South, Middle East, Southern Asia, and all the civilizations that connect. Mountains create an isolation, a safe space full of minerals and resources that then the lakes and bodies of water help us connect to the rest of the world. Hope I'm not driving you mad through my ramblings. From this environment, geography that provides us protection, materials, both mineral and resources, rich earth that we can use for farming, created two societies: mountain societies, who are more pastoralist, who use sheep herding and goat herding and cow and cattle and other animals that they feed on these grasslands in the mountains, and lower hill Georgians, hill Caucasians in general, who have rich soil that they can use to till and feed themselves, feed Caucasians in the mountains, and feed any merchant passing through here. So resources since the Bronze Age Or even further, as I jokingly implied in my video, mountain Caucasians have been provided bronze, iron, and other resources to the empires of the Levant, Middle East, and Mediterranean civilizations. And these rivers and lakes and seas that surround us were the pathways we connected to the world. Why am I telling you all of this? Because I want to provide historical examples in to our fantasy world building. I think it's important to ground your stories with real world examples. Caucasus in the Bronze Age civilizations, for example, which is my favorite time period. Middle Ages is popular and I like it too, but Bronze Age is my favorite because during that time, Caucasian forge priests who knew the secrets of bronze making and later discovered iron crafting and solved the riddle of steel. Khalibs are actually presumed to be the ones who invented iron working that we know today because, again, the mountains provided copper for mining and provided a lot of rich on top and underground metal resources, and other many different types of metal can be found here. Except, which is very interesting, we don't have a lot of resources of tin. Tin is the main component to making bronze. We have copper, but there are many different copper alloys such as brass or arsenical bronze, which actually probably was more used here. But tin came in from the Mediterranean merchants. This is how it's this is why I find it so fascinating. So Mediterranean merchants brought it from England or Spain or other very rare mines that provided tin. Then that tin through merchants of the Mediterranean came into Minoan civilizations and other near Black Sea cultures that then was brought into Black Sea, then into these rivers right here, and then blacksmiths here brought it up into the mountains, forged bronze weapons because during Bronze Age it was a secret. Dwarf-like mountain forge priests knew how to combine these two resources to make a new metal. Imagine to those ancient people, copper and tin, two different metals, to create much stronger, newer metal was like magic to them. Was literally magic. We can see that narrative, we can see that idea reflected in Caucasian mythology, where even our creator in the mountainous regions, creator of humanity, is Morige. Morige is the god of order. Sounds like Muradin, but Morige god actually brought world into order, forged the stars and the sun, created, basically he's a blacksmith god who forges and crafts the world that we live today. And there are and one of his famous forge priests is Irkush. Irkush is a famous hero, demigod like figure in Georgian highland mythology, where he battles giants who once enslaved humanity. And in one version, giants were the ones who taught uh, Caucasians how to forge metal. So basically, what I'm getting at here, Caucasians, especially Georgians, because I'm Georgian, are the closest thing to real world dwarves. Because, of course, we're not that short. But other than that, not even joking, like metalworking, fighting, culture, brewing of beer in the mountains, and making wine in the lowlands and hill lands. There are two types of Georgians. There is mountain Georgians who brew beer, forge armor and weapons, and fight the invading forces of the mountains that come through the little passageways that we guard in civilized world. And there are hill Georgians who are more mercantile, connected to the civilized world, work with earth that they can then trade with mountain Georgians and other Caucasians. Thank you for listening to my mad ramblings, and let's get back to fantasy. Hope I didn't bore you guys with my history lecture, but one of the big points of my channel is to slowly introduce Caucasian history and culture to wider world who might not be familiar with it. And I think world building using Caucasian culture and Caucasian peoples for inspiration for dwarven culture is one of the ways I can share my history and my passion with you guys. But going back into dwarves and fantasy, we can use things that I've showcased here about Caucasian history, Caucasian culture, and relation with other peoples to inform and make your world building more interesting. Like we see in D&D, there are two types of dwarves: mountain isolationist, ultra traditionalist dwarves who are greater warriors forced to fight dragons and giants and underworld monsters all the time, and there are hill dwarves who are more open to other societies, uh, deal with trade, more social interactions, gaining more influence from other cultures and influence in other cultures more. But we can go further, as I hopefully showcase in describing Caucasus. Not only native Caucasians exist here, there are many people who have settled here thousands and thousands of years ago, and there are many people who interact with us. So we can use other races from fantasy world, such as halflings and gnomes, with dwarves, because all three of them gain their inspiration from real world mythology, earth spirits. For example, halflings are inspired by earth working spirits of harvest and fertility, and gnomes are informed by household spirits of workmanship and assistance, like famous story of house elves and cobblers would leave their work and house spirits would come out, finish their work, and get payment with milk and cream. So we can use these fantasy races and their interaction to make the world more complex and interesting. Like halflings in my world live on the foothills of dwarven mountains where mineral rich rivers come down, and sometimes volcano explosions and ash and many such environments enrich the soils of the foothills from the mountains, where halflings create their farming societies. Dwarves provide metalworking tools they can use to farm food much better, and provide sometimes protection and military force to protect halflings from raiders and pillagers and conquerors. And halflings provide food and nourishment to these dwarves that rather than spend more time providing food, they can spend more time mining and crafting. Halflings provide food, dwarves provide protection and resources, and let's add gnomes into the mix. Gnomes could be the intermediary, the ones that go up in the mountains to bring food to the dwarves and buy metalworking products, and then bring those metals and resources back to halflings and, of course, other societies. In my world, gnomes actually are more traveler societies that they move in between different kingdoms and empires, interacting with humans, elves, orcs, other monstrous races, or stuff like other empires and cultures I have in my world. And they work as merchants and intermediaries between societies who might not be as friendly to one another directly, but you need resources exchange between them. For example, dwarves wouldn't like to sell metalworking products to elves, so gnomes, because they have fey ancestry and dwarven ancestry, provide their help to be intermediaries between these two cultures. Other than being great merchants, providing intermediary position between all these people, they can also use the resources that they acquired from either halflings, food they acquired, make interesting dishes and sell them, or metalworking and other minerals they acquired from dwarves to make little gadgets and tools. That's why, in my world, alchemists and wizards are often gnomes Druids and rangers are often halflings who interact with natural world more, and paladins and clerics are often dwarves who use their ancient knowledge and faith and wisdom to create and craft and explore those dark mines filled with monsters and mysteries. And of course, I used historical examples of my culture, Caucasians, and there are many different Caucasians, how they interact with each other. Usually, we just raid and pillage one another and have thousand-year-old grudges. This is why I feel so related with dwarves, and they're like, we shall put that in the book of grudges. This is literally how Caucasians behave. They have grudges dating thousands of years ago. Mountain Caucasians provide resources and military protections to lowland Caucasians, who then provide food to the highlanders and other interacting societies, be it nomadic societies or traveling societies, work as intermediary, providing connection to the other empires and cultures that we sometimes are at war with and cannot directly interact. I hope you guys found my mad ramblings cohesive and understandable. And even more hopefully, I hope you guys found it interesting, enough interesting to watch more of my videos. And if you like what I did here, connecting real world history and culture with fantastical worlds, I could actually start a new series talking about fantasy with relation to history and culture and mythology. I cover a lot of history, culture, and mythology on my channel, usually, of course, with Caucasian and Georgian perspectives. I also would like to thank my dear patrons and viewers who stick around to my channel and watch my videos. You guys are the lifeblood of this channel and the reason I uh, struggle through life and actually create this. And of course, another great thank you to Grungeon Master, who made me so angry. I dedicated few days to actually thinking about it and finally made a video about it. So thank you all for watching, for inspiring me, for helping me out, and hopefully you like what I do here and continue to watch. Thank you and take care.